Okay. Hi, welcome to another Comics Grinder. I have Daniel McCloskey with me. We're going to be talking about Cloud Town and all of its other comics. There's also Friends in Stormy Weather. And I'm going to hand it to you, Daniel. We're going to just pretend we're in a coffee shop and we're thinking about how to spread the word better. What would you say to somebody who doesn't know anything about Cloud Town?
Okay. Well, if we were in a coffee shop, I would do what I did when I was walking down the street and ran into some cartoonists, which is show you the proof I just got. Because like this is the exciting part if you're the creator.
Uh-huh.
It's like you get something in the mail and you're like, is it totally messed up? And usually there's something. But this is this is like the story is about to continue fairly soon, depending on when this comes out now. And so I've got a proof. It's going to be a little different than this, but you got the tape binding, again, a kind of notebook style thing. But
Nice.
Cloud Town is about two best friends that go to a new high school because their old high school was smashed by a giant monster. Um, I think in your very kind review, you pointed out something that is often a point of contention with my work that I think is worth highlighting because the things people like about it and the things people don't like about it are often similar. And so you can find out if you're the kind of person that might be right by thinking about whether you like a little bit of chaos and uncertainty. Like if you are the kind of person that is always asking your friend or relative like what is going on in a movie, like that's probably this might be not your thing, like to be real. But if you are someone that has like a high narrative reading level, is always guessing what happens in the future, I think that this is a better dance partner for you as a reader, kind of.
Wow, that perfect way to point that out. I would say yeah, it's multi-layered. It's the reads like well, I think of like William Faulkner, but there's so many writers where there's a lot going on, and you don't necessarily have to catch it the first time. You just keep going. And I love where there's lots of texture. I mean, you don't it's not so smooth and streamlined a path.
In fact, this is so Cloud Town, the one you held up first, is the first book I had with a big publisher. And when I pitched it, there was a very funny moment where I had gone through some edits, and this, the young editor who had just, it's been a while now, but she had just started at Abrams. She's done tons of work since then. She was pitching it to her higher ups, and she was like, "Yeah, this is all great. Can I get the final pages?" And I thought they were final. So I
Mm.
was like, okay, to like my agent, I was like, what does that mean? And he was like, smooth lines. I was like, smooth lines. Okay. I heard you drew everything smoother. But then now that I'm continuing it self-published, I am, I think, taking a lot of how I grew as an artist, but I'm also going back to the things I personally enjoy in style. Um, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Ping Pong or Tekken Concrete from Toyo Matsumoto. Uh,
No,
it's it's a manga, but it's like because it's a sports manga in an indie style, it keeps you guessing just by the style, in my opinion.
uh-huh.
If this was drawn in the super polished style, I'd feel very confident I knew what was going to happen. But because it's him, I'm like, what? Like an alien could come down. I don't know. And that, for me, that is another layer of the uncertainty that I enjoy.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about landing an opportunity to work with Abrams, which is wonderful. We love publishers, whether they're indie, university, big publishing houses. It's
Yeah.
such a great thing. And you've got the best of both worlds. You have Abrams, they love you, and you also get to do your self-published work. Is it a delicate balance, or what can you tell us about that?
For me, it's been an educational journey. That is one that again, that's the only editor I've worked with. That's the only big book I've done at this point. I've certainly pitched some things and had some interest on other stuff. How I came to work with them, mm, is, I think, so I'm going to do two things right now. One is I'll tell you how I did it, and then another is a couple of caveats of how people in my world have ended up in that place. Because if your ears are perking up at this moment, you're probably thinking about you. And a lot of the stuff is not directly replicable, like specifically to me, but it is kind of more broadly. So, um, with me, my dad is a children's book author, right?
Yeah.
And my dad was at a wedding, and someone who had gotten my mom a job when she was in her 30s was like, "Oh, my son's an agent." Like he was just at the point where he was starting to build a list. He was an assistant agent, and then he was trying to grow his list. So that is the agent equivalent of like having self-published, but like not published mainstream. So we were at similar levels in our career. And he goes up to my dad and is like, "Can I be, can I represent you?" My dad was like, "No." and and my mom was like, "What about our son?" And then they gave me his email and I sent him like the five things I was pitching on my own already, right? And so that was something we could learn together. So we started working together and we pitched a book a year for a few years. And then this one was the first one that got traction. Um, and this is also the first one I was doing a series where I did a bunch of issue ones. It was called issue one, I think. And issue one was like a horror comic. Issue one, issue two was Cloud Town. And I had started issue one, issue three, which was a totally different story. Each issue of this series was a totally different first chapter of a story. But the second one sold, so I stopped doing that. Okay, so that's pretty specific. I got a dad, I got this connection, but I used to run a writers co-op, and a number of these people have agents. A number of these people are published. And I would also say my dad doesn't have an agent. A lot of people that are professionally published cartoonists don't. It is not required. Um, it was, helpful for me to have a little bit of guidance and assurance that like I wasn't crazy and I was moving in the right direction. If publishing with a major publisher is your goal, which it might not be. Um, but all of those people really did something really basic is they were consistent and persistent and put things out there. And their agents all found them in different ways. One like cold emailed them because they had won a small sci-fi award, or even they were nominated. They didn't even win. Another was met at a artist residency, and she was like the one writer this agent uh, registered with. Um, the one that you can be in control of is you pitching agents. It's called querying. That's something you can Google. It is also the hardest because it is always easier to be the person other people are coming to, right? Um, all that being said, again, you do not need an agent, especially in comics, and it is unclear if you need a book published with a bigger publisher. It depends on what your goals are. Like Cloud Town is in more hands and more libraries and is reaching more kids, which is amazing and important. Um, and for me as a writer, like most of what I'm aiming for is that connection that I find with the people that happen to be like me in some way out in the world. But like financially speaking, like real talk, like Kickstarter is much more likely to make you the same amount of money. Like in amount of time that you have a day job, it's it's also a good place to iterate. And I guess the final thing I'm going to say, which people don't like to hear, but is something like my friend back in Pittsburgh, someone I always looked up to, told me this a long time ago. Jim Rugg once said, "You think that there's going to be someone else that makes this work, like brings your book up to a professional level, but you just need to be able to do it." Um,
Mm.
and and I agree. Like the best time to get a publisher, like in hindsight, is when you don't need them. True for jobs too. If you ever want a raise, the best time to ask for a raise is when you're actually ready to walk away. In my personal experience, that's when I get them, you know.
All right. Yeah, yeah. Jim Rugg is a treasure in the comics community, and
Absolutely.
when you get a chance to get some advice from him, take it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that all respect to publishers because they have that's a world to itself, and there's so many benefits to it. And sure, the reality is, if you're in it for the money, maybe the money won't be the biggest priority, but they do certain things to get your face out there, your book out there. They
Yeah.
get it into libraries, which is wonderful. And
You get reviews, which is very helpful for
yeah,
people to believe in you, you know?
now we'll bounce around a little bit.
Yeah,
With your Cloud Town, I think of it as how does the reader hook into it? Well, there's various ways. The plot, the hurricanes, the monsters, but the main characters, Penn and Olive. What can you tell us about those two main characters?
yeah, Penn and Olive are kind of a classic duo, and their relationship was built out of one person's knee-jerk reaction to protect those around them, and another one when I mean they went through something heavy, like their school was smashed by a giant monster. And hilarity aside, like that's a that's a tragic and tough thing. Like and so Olive is terrified of everything. She's got some PTSD, and Penn reacts to tough situations by like bottling down and acting. She's a person of action, not thought. She prefers it that way. And so they become a little bit of a good duo, but so much of storytelling is thinking about like an amalgamation of all the human interaction as we understand it. And like I have seen this before where someone comes into themselves and that can often create a strain on the relationships that are important to them at that time because it changes their dynamic. So the first big arc is very much the story of Olive becoming more confident. Um, like she doesn't get over anything, but she becomes a stronger person. And the series, as it continues after that, is a little bit about some of the pitfalls people can run into after they overcome that big challenge in their life. Um,
So
yeah,
these issues are really going to be something that anyone can relate to, but especially the group of the demographic, whatever we want to call them, the middle grade uh, readers.
sure, yeah.
What can you tell us about that readership?
It is hard for me to fully know what my readership is. I can tell you that I'm making comics that have a lot of the elements that I and people I know really enjoy about like manga, like giant kaiju stuff, but also a lot of indie. Like a lot of reviewers point out I'm a little indie, a little manga since very early before I was doing like this kind of action stuff. Um, One thing that's nice about that is there's enough for, someone our age, and also your niece or nephew. And then your niece or nephew's parents, your siblings will not get mad at you because it is much more age appropriate. It's like the graphic novel is Abrams approved 9 to 14, even younger is fine. The self-published stuff does include a little bit of gore, like giant monster gore, and one instance of a giant robot flipping someone off because in the entire history of giant robot comics with teenagers piloting, no one has ever flipped anyone off, and that seems unlikely in my estimation of the world.
Well, I think anything that would, for lack of a better example, at the moment, anything that could happen in Stranger Things, I think is fair game
Sure.
for you.
Yeah, yeah, I think that that's true. Um, this is kind of a blunt way of saying it, but I had a sub-agent that called it if Evangelion was made by the creators of Steven Universe. Evangelion is an extremely adult thing, so I don't know if you're familiar, but
Maybe
And I
one of them.
avoided watching Steven Universe because I was like, I'm not till I finish this will I understand it. But I think that's a loose approximation. I could understand that.
What can you tell us about your relationship with your dad? Was he the guy who sparked your interest in comics, or were you doing it yourself at the same time, or
Yeah,
what was the dynamic
yeah.
with that?
He has a my so my dad is a children's book author, Kevin McCloskey. He had one book out when I was young. Here's some of them. Called Mrs. Fitz's Flamingos, which I'm quite a fan of. And I did get to see his like proofs when he was pitching things and stuff.
Oh,
But it wasn't until kind of recent years that his kind of series took off with Toon Books. He has a ninth one out now, called Crazy About Capybaras. But my dad, I am similar to him and different than him. He is an insanely good performer. Uh, like he walks into an elementary school and the kids are like giggling before he opens his mouth, and he can reel them in and then keep them just the right amount of excited to be engaged, but not completely devolve into chaos. He also, if kids are listening, cover your ears. He also plays Santa at malls in Christmas time, so he's incredibly good with kids. Um, as far as being an influence on what I made, I thought I what he wasn't, but he surely was. I was the young, like I have an older sibling. I perceive myself as like the less artistic of them. I was doing animation when I was really young. Um, a lot of my a lot of my comics, especially Cloudtown, is a little bit about first jobs because almost all giant mech stories are about first jobs for teens. Um, but my first job, I dug trails in Idaho, like digging rocks and pulling out roots and making little bridges, like 9 hours a day, and then saving that money and buying a laptop to do animation with. So he was always really encouraging of that. He would take me to animation festivals. He took me to Mocha Fest when I was really young, one of the first ones. My dad's very proud. He brought me to my first comic convention. My mother said, "You should have brought him to a doctor's convention," but she's joking mostly. But yeah, no, he's a really interesting guy. He's a fun guy. And another thing it taught me is he was an illustration professor and creative thinking professor in a small town, Kutztown, my entire youth. And one grounding thing is that every year in this small class in this small town, there was always a few students that were just showed up way better at art than me and have. And so I never really had this kind of perception that uh, I was like I was somehow special in the creative, like artistic ability realm. And I do think that it's tough because there's a lot of comics advice that goes one of two ways, and there are two types of extremes that you're probably somewhere on that spectrum where some people are very confident and share constantly before they're without focusing on improving their craft. And there's another kind that is extremely self-conscious and focuses intensely on improving their craft without sharing. And the lessons either of those people need to hear are probably the tend to be the opposite of what they absorb. Um, because in my experience, if you hear people say, hold your stuff till you're ready, and you're the kind of person that is doing that already, you're gonna hear that part. And if you're the kind of person that's like, you just need to make 1,000 plot pots and share your art and improvement will come naturally. You're probably the kind of person already tending toward that. There is a balance as with all things, and uh, yeah, try to think. If you're someone trying to advance as a cartoonist and listening to this, I would consider thinking about which one of those sounds easiest to you, and consider doing the opposite a little bit.
Well, I love engaging with. I think of the people who listen to what I do or read my reviews as general readers. So what
Mhm.
you're saying relates to making comics, but could relate to any kind of creative endeavor.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, in life generally, the challenges that we run to are not maybe our real challenge. You know, it's fairly common.
I think a person needs to mix it up.
Yeah.
They need to buckle down and do the work, and then do some more, and then take it a step further and do some more on their own, and then
Hmm.
also be willing to share the work because you just never know what somebody's going to pick up on. Wait, what are you? How is it that you're seeing it this way? Oh, well, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to
Yeah.
sleep on it and then consider what you said, because I come from a creative writing and a painting background, and learning the craft, you learn it in school, but you also learn it in workshops, you learn it from friends. A lot of the painting you learn in workshops outside of school, because there's only so much time to devote to the skill, which doesn't seem right, but it works out in the end. And what was I? Where was I going with this?
Well, I have
Uh,
a question for you,
go ahead,
actually.
please.
Where did you find me? Like, you reached out to
That's
me.
that's the thing. I looked at your samples and I thought this guy really loves to draw and he really loves storytelling. So I just saw it on Instagram,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that was good enough for me. And I see a lot of stuff, stuff that comes into me, stuff that I reach out to folks, and so I feel I have an honest um, can give an honest assessment of where someone is at a particular time. And some people might not want to hear that certain things, but and I might err sometimes. I'm just giving you my view at this particular time. But in your case, I just felt really good that you're on to something. I can see you drawing all the time. I can see you just naturally uh, keeping notes, reviving, editing, all of that stuff. Am I correct to assume all
Well,
this?
I think I would say first, thank you so much. And it is nice to know you just stumbled across my stuff over there. Um, and another thing, thank you again for just being a critical voice in indie comics. And like, you're paying close attention to things that people spend an enormous amount of time on. Like, all of your reviews are like, many of them are things I've never heard of. And they're something someone's dedicated an enormous amount of their life to. So, critical or positive or anything like that attention, I'm sure is largely appreciated. Um, as far as like liking drawing, I it depends on the day, and like that is a thing that is a differentiator that exists between all those hundreds of thousands of people that are better that like at drawing and maybe even pacing or all sorts of things that started when I started, and me is that I have been continued to go. Um, I I am I it's unclear fully what I'm driven by. I know some parts of it, and honestly, me trying to figure that out better has like better understanding what is driving me in this place has been very helpful for me as a creative person and just as like a living person.
Mhm.
Um, And I think that for me, it is about making something that's a little unusual and having that human connection. And, my first big project came out when I was 22 and I started when I was a teenager. I'm 39, now. And I only ever printed like 900 copies of it, but I sold the first 400 in the first month. And by the end of that month, someone had found it and wanted to Zoom with me really badly and was ordering like 40 copies to give away as they traveled through Europe.
Wow.
And that's so much of why I do this. I keep eventually having this thing where I just throw things out in the world and it's kind of just gone. There are messages in a bottle. And in a way it feels like you're completely alone. But then at some point, often years and years later, you'll have an interaction. Like when Clowntown finally came out, I went to ALA, which American Library Association, a great convention, all librarians there. And I was giving away some zines, and this woman came up, and I had brought a few chapbooks, poetry books. I basically don't write poetry, but I had a collaborative one I had written with a friend who is a poet, because friendship is important. and and she was like, "You wrote this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "I went to Quimby's in Chicago. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time, and I bought this. I liked it so much, I gave it to a friend and went and bought another copy. I did this 9 times, and then I asked where the rest of them were, and they said, we don't have any more." And then they contacted me, and I said I didn't have any more. And she just never read it again. It was like almost a decade later or something. And and so I had gotten some more in the mail from the person who printed it that had moved to Alaska and wasn't selling them. And so she got them, but just the fact that this woman I had never met like had such a deep emotional connection to something I made with my friends is like that is a big part of what motivates me to keep doing things. Um, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, where to continue with this? Jennifer is my partner. Jennifer, she goes by Jennifer Daydreamer, and
Okay.
we met in the early aughts, and she brought me into her world, which was the Seattle alt scene, which she was a part of in the '90s and onward. And well, she fondly remembers all the connections she made from having a PO box.
Oh
You can
yeah.
imagine that. Maybe your dad can relate to that, or other friends of yours can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah.
So we don't have the PO box connection anymore. But of
No.
course, there are all sorts of other ways. So many unexpected things happen on Instagram alone. I kind of just have an instinct or feeling, and I'm certainly not alone, that Instagram is filling that void of the post office, of the PO box, in a way. There's a lot of it's doing that's not good, because doom scrolling and
Yes.
all the distraction and rabbit holes and all that stuff. But if you use it in a healthy way, if you set out to, I want to learn about this, and I'm going to just start digging into this particular subject. You'll get so much out of it doing it
Yeah,
that way.
absolutely. I really enjoy that, sense of mystery. And I think that's a little bit what aesthetically drives me back towards more indie elements often. Like I have so many zines next to me and so many people that I appreciate in my life that like they're for years they would staple and leave things out in Pittsburgh, PA. I lived in Pittsburgh for 11 years. I'm in the West Coast now. But my roommate Nate McDonough, who does but on Instagram, the things that he does is he does indie comics about the business of buying and selling like traditional comics on like eBay and it's quite funny. But he would make and staple and leave out zines all over town for, years and years. And then I eventually met someone who was teaching at the all artists high school. And she would have people bring in the things that were influential to them. And many of them would bring mainstream art magazines, like fine art books. But every year, at least one kid would bring in these zines. They're like, this guy's so weird. I think he lives in town. I don't know what he's doing. And that kind of sense of exciting, like bizarre, like you found a secret is amazing. And any way we can replicate that is a delight.
Okay, while we're saying that, I was crafting an anecdote that I can share,
Hmm.
and it's a little convoluted, but let's give it a try here. So I think there's so many cartoonists out there of the highest quality, of middle quality, of still figuring things out, and it's hard to keep track of everybody. And there's names that I think everybody knows, and then it turns out the spotlight has been not quite put on them properly. So that's one thing that I like to do is try to bing put the spotlight on people that maybe have not been on enough people's radar. They need to be on more people's radar. Um, I did this event at the Charles Schultz Museum in Santa Rosa, which I highly recommend
Nearby.
you
Yeah.
trying out for.
Okay.
Uh, oh yeah, basically just you just ask and then see what happens and go through a few friendly hurdles. It's just a process, and if that's something you might want to do, I think you'd enjoy it. It was a blast for me, and uh, you get to chat with Mary Shine, who's an amazing cartoonist. Uh, Her graphic novel is You and Me on Repeat. And this isn't on enough, it's on a lot of people's radars, but it needs to be on even more people's radars. And I'm always surprised when somebody doesn't know about her book. And we were chatting, and at the time, another cartoonist, Hans Rickhide, was a top of mind for me. And he's known for Cochlea and Eustacia, which is his one of his ongoing characters, among other things he does. And I mentioned that to Mary, and she said, "Oh, you know, I don't know if I know that name. There's so many names." So she's trying to get people to know about her, and she doesn't know about this particular person. I'm thinking you should know. It's an endless process of trying to connect people, trying to connect cartoonists to each other, trying to connect readers to the cartoonists.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I, after finishing drawing Cloud Town, but before it came out, worked at Mission Comics, a San Francisco comic shop,
Yeah.
for a while, and it was good for me in, well, in part, well, for a few reasons. But what I was going to bring back to, like, the difficulty of connecting, I think it's easy to, if you are someone trying to share stuff with people, be frustrated that it is difficult. But if I think about my own consumer experience, like, it is hard to get me to buy something. I often will finally check something out that someone told me about like years ago, and then I saw it a few times, and then they were talking at the local shop, but I missed it. And then, like, I kind of just ready to buy something and I see it, and then I have it. And then maybe I have it for, like, people post Amazon tracking things. The number of people that own books and don't read them has become more public. And it's
Mm.
amazing how many people buy books and then they're just there. And then, okay, maybe it's like 6 years. And I finally read this book that I thought about 6 years ago. And I'm like, this is the best book in the world. Why didn't you tell me? But they did, you
Hmm.
know? So a little bit of it is patience, right? Like, um, I'm continuing to do, like, you just found Cloud Town. It came out in 2022, and I had a zine version of it, 3 or 4 years prior to that. There were 60 copies printed in risograph, which is why it's two colors. I pitched it and they were like, great. I was like, okay, so here's how I'd like to do the color. And they're like, no, 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 we just, that's, it's like this. I was like, okay, all right. So yeah, part of being in this long run is this knowledge that the the things I've been sharing with people are still on their way to people.
Exactly. That should give people a lot of heart or feeling of security, confidence that I'm doing this project and crickets, nobody's picking up on it. Well, because it's on a journey. It's on a
Yeah.
long journey, and there is the whole publicity cycle you go through when the book first comes out. That first those first few weeks, those first few months, then the first year, and then the next year, and then at like the news cycle, you have to move on to the next thing and the next thing.
Mhm.
But don't lose heart because everything comes back and it takes time. I have books back there that I what happens is, oh, I gotta get this now, or I'm given a copy, and for some reason I set it aside, and it gets lost in a sea of other books, and then I think, oh, wait a minute, I do I have a copy of this, and then I find it. So that's what you're describing.
Yeah. And, like, one way I'm trying to stay in people's lives a little more is I just do like email list. So people get 4 pages of the comic as I'm working on it every 2 weeks. It's spelled wrong. Things will be different when it's finally out. But um, but that's been kind of interesting. That's been fun to do. Um, yeah.
Now, maybe tell us a little bit about your typical, and I'm sure every day's a little different, but what's your, once you got settled down, you got your coffee or whatever, and you're starting to draw, could you describe what your process is like on a typical day or more or less typical day?
All right. So I will say that lately, my typical day has been 100% things that I am not great at and don't do a lot of because I'm only getting ready for a Kickstarter. Kickstarter is like 5 weeks away from the recording of this, probably for a month and a half. Everything that hasn't been my day job has been kind of getting ducks in a row for that. I added more space in there, and I added because things always come up, and so I would say, as far as like working hard, like it's a good first step if you're not someone that has been working hard at something you enjoy, but it's another step to work hard at the aspects of the thing you enjoy that you just don't enjoy. So I would say part of it is doing the things you don't like and getting in the habit of exercising those. Um, my typical day in creation is varied. I am trying and have been for my entire life to figure out a better pace. Again, some Jim Rugg advice. Um, Many years ago, he said that um, he was reading a book about a professional bicyclist. And he said, the bicyclist had a quote that it doesn't get easier, you just go faster. And that
Hmm.
is true of comics. You can get better, and the better you get, the more things you're paying attention to. It's not gotten easier. Um, but I do try to do a minimum of 2 pages a week while having a day job. That's the thing. I have try to have the next page roughed out before I get there. I have better experience when I have a strong outline that in the outline alone makes me have a emotional response from that outline. I also find I have a little bit better time if I am not super restrictive with the number of pages I give myself, because I usually find something fun that makes me laugh and will take like 2 pages, because someone slipping on a banana and running into something else takes like 2 full days of work, you know?
Hmm.
So um, I am currently doing all of my rough comics on this screen, um, printing them out, and then either inking them physically or, a lot for this last book, doing the digital equivalent. I am someone that values like speed of the creation as well as like artistic look of the creation. Um, in part because I think, you only get so many days on Earth,
Hmm.
and I would like to make the story complete. And I'm a one person show like so many of us. So I have found that if I only do digital, I slow down. And if I only do physical, I slow down. My fastest method is when I've been doing physical for 4 to 6 weeks and then I switch to digital. And that, when I treat digital as if it's real ink and I can't undo anything, that's my best speed. I think when I look back on the pages, the ones that I did physical form and didn't really settle with are the ones I like the most. Here, you said, so some of you will be listening, but I'll pull out some pages.
Oh yeah, we love that.
So, like this is an example of a combination. Um, so I did the roughs digitally. This blue area on the top is actually printed out because I didn't like what was down here. So I printed this out and redrew the bottom in physical land.
Hmm.
And then that never even got in the story. So occasionally things disappear. And then here's an example of a pitch that did not sell, although there was some interest, um, called Macho Valentine. Maybe someday I'll complete it. But this is the inked page. I did the rough version, like the pencils digitally. And this is, hand lettered, but for me, this is just hand lettered over top of a font. So it's kind of, I have an Ames lettering guide, but I didn't use it for this. Um, and then this is what it looked like colored digitally again. And I am someone that often kind of gravitates to blue and yellow as my palette. So for this one, I just took photos of a desert and used that as my palette, to try to change what I tend towards. Um, yeah, and so I have a lot of tips and tricks for writing, um, but writing is so different because having a good mental place for your writing, creates the potential for outsourced success. So on a day of writing, you might get a paragraph done or you might get 20 pages done if you're just there. So not overstraining your like creative muscles and having something you're excited to sit down in front of is a common writer's trick. I have a little more experience writing prose, um, early in my life than comics. And so, stopping mid-sentence, like keeping notes for what's happening next, that is really valuable for writing. For comics, there is a limit to what you can do in a day, even if you're inspired. So I have traditionally grinded through that until I cannot open my hands, which I won't recommend. It is not a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I had a few YouTube videos I put up, that I drew Cloud Town. Okay, let's back up in time. When I sold Cloud Town, I was living in a van traveling the US, and I was still doing physical comics and still printing them in newsprint in runs of 1,000 and distributing them. But my girlfriend, she had a remote job before everyone did. And so we would basically be commuting every day to a new Starbucks around the country as we traveled. So we'd, wake up, drive a few hours to a Starbucks, work for 4 hours, drive a couple hours to another Starbucks, work for 4 hours, and then drive to a campsite, like mostly every day. And setting up and tearing down ink over and over again in a van that, like, if you forget it will just splash across everything when you turn left is was not great. So I invested in my first iPad and my current iPad, and the pitch I did for Cloud Town was drawn on that iPad. Well, that's not true, but it's close enough to true. Uh, and but the graphic novel was drawn on that iPad, and Procreate automatically records everything you do. And so I knew that I was drawing 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for years, but I didn't know until I went back and revisited how many times I was drawing the same page. And that brings me back to why the combination of physical ink and digital is the fastest for me, because it's easy to slip into erasing and redoing the same thing forever. There is a great show called Monben that I highly recommend everyone watch. It's like a Japanese public TV show about manga where they put cameras in professional manga artist studio. And this is a thing that happens to them too. Like it's 3 a.m., they're on deadline and they're just redrawing something that was totally fine the first time over and over again because they're stuck in their own doubt cycle, kind of. Um, I have found for me, now that Cloudtown is done, and now that I know that about myself, that if I am drawing physically, the fact that I have to cut out a piece of paper or white out or start over is enough resistance. It's harder for me to get into that cycle of redrawing and redrawing. Um, so that's why I tend to do physical until I get bored and switch to digital. or if I'm running behind, then I will just do digital. But I can't do it too long, or else I start running behind worse.
Okay, that's a lot. So let's go back. This show is called Mind Bend.
Monben, Manben.
Mon Bend.
Highly
Okay.
recommended.
Okay, I will look that up.
Hmm.
So you're trying to avoid getting stuck in a rut where you're drawing the same layout, staying too much in your comfort zone. You're basically saying.
No, like so the video that really helped me realize it is I was watching the time lapse. The series was called Cloud Town Tuesday. I did it like weekly on YouTube for like a year. And my sister and I were watching it. I would watch it. I started watching by myself, but that was boring. So I started watching with my friends and family. And my sister is just like traditional fine artist training is just like, what are you doing? That hand was fine. That hand was fine. That hand was fine. And I just drawing the same hand, but it just doesn't look right to me, right?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
because any artist, any person is gonna have times of doubt. Like we are not built to just be happy and confident all the time. And so knowing that, um, it's good to be able, as you mature, to recognize when you are in that space mentally and have a series of actions you can do that aren't going to make you not doubt yourself, but they are going to be more pragmatic solutions to the task you are doing, knowing you're doubting yourself.
Wow. Well, let's see, what could I contribute really quick? I think you need to keep drawing, and if you start a page and you've gotten so far into it, go ahead and finish it. You can use that as your warm-up page. If it's something you don't think you're going to use, everything has a useful place in the process. I find what happens to me, and I'm trying to get better about it, is when I'm writing, trying to figure out a graphic novel and the specific content, the specific pages. I'll write it in one notebook, but then I'll lean over and start writing it in another notebook. Why am I doing this? And it's going to become more difficult to retrieve things. So I'm trying to stay to a master notebook if possible, and a
Huh.
master sketchbook or series of sketchbooks. And it can be done. I specifically for this project, because I'm following the best of Henry's work methods, and I labeled these sketchbooks are for this process, and before you know it, the sketchbook's full, and you just have to, and you have Bibles you can create as you go. There's all sorts of ways to do, but staying organized is so important. Wouldn't you agree?
I hear it's a good idea. That sounds great. I am aspirationally organized eventually. I would say that like, yeah, that seems I wanted to ask you about so forgive me, I've yet to read your memoir, but I it was mentioned not yeah, memoir about your friend. And I had seen speaking of uh writers that I've heard about many years ago and I've always been interested in. Theodore Sturgeon is one of the writers mentioned in your blurb about this book, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're an uninitiated, Theodore Sturgeon was a very successful sci-fi writer of his day, and the character Kilgore Trout, written by Kurt Vonnegut, is often said to be based on Theodore Sturgeon. And if you are familiar with how names work, you might believe that is true also. So that is someone I've always been interested in knowing more about because of that fact, because of Kurt Vonnegut. So it makes me intrigued in your memoir.
Well, that's the major Easter egg in the book, because
Mm, spoilers, watch out.
yeah, it's called George's Run, which is a play off of Logan's Run, because he
Yeah.
co-wrote Logan's Run with
Uh,
William F. Nolan, and this was towards the later part of their career. They always felt like they were overshadowed by the big iconic names like Ray Bradbury and Rod Serling, Richard Matheson, who they had worked with, and they thought we have to we've got to do it. We got to create a thing that's totally our own. and they ended up doing Logan's Run, which is a cult classic, and
Yeah.
it came out in 1976. The next year, it was Star Wars. So Star Wars kind of blew everybody out of the water.
Yeah.
Nobody could foresee that, and it did good and it did bad because it created these incredibly blockbuster franchise vehicles, and that comes back to Theodore Sturgeon. The main thing about Theodore Sturgeon is that he's such an authentic, real writer. The prose is delicious. I think of writers like Philip Roth, Ray Bradbury. It's not just a great story; it's the way it's written, the feelings that it evokes, the sentiment involved. Because for Sturgeon, it was always a lot of it was about how everybody matters.
Mm.
And More Than Human is about the overriding theme is everybody matters. That from whatever strata of life you're in, and the More Than Human thing is it's these three misfits who together become a superhuman, and so it's fanciful and has like a little bit of a chaotic thing going on, but it's very articulate. It resonated with
Sounds very up my alley.
yes, you'd love it. You would love it. And so when I was talking to George, and it was a series of conversations we had, and we had one in his home, and I think I asked him more or less what is the one that really stands out to you, and he kind of pointed upwards, More Than Human, Theodore Sturgeon, and he's always been attached to Ray Bradbury, and a lot of folks say, oh well, Ray Bradbury, he's the god of among he's the biggest of all, and George, yes, there's Ray Bradbury has his place, but then if you want to go even a little bit further into the most enlightening, most fun, most uh, there's just something a little bit more going on. Even though he never became like a household name. That's
Well, he
part of.
didn't write novels, right? He tended to do short stories, is my
He did short
understanding.
stories. He did novellas. More Than Humans, one of the bigger books. And he did stories where he did one version and then did a slightly different version, so he was like a writer's writer. He just loved writing, and he'd go back to a story and tweak it and make it something else. There's like many versions of More Than Human,
Interesting. Yeah.
and you'll find it if you do a search. There's a whole collection of there's just an endless collection of his short stories. They recently collected them all. Um, so yeah, the book is about the love for storytelling, whether it's oral or written. And George, in his later years, was like a spokesman for just literacy and reading and thinking. And
Yeah.
he was a great orator. He was a really a trim, lean guy, but with a booming voice and just this flowing beard and long hair. And he told me, well, that's part of my brand. I wear the Panama hat. I wear this look because it's unforgettable. People, once you see me, once you hear me, you know, you won't forget me.
Yeah. Interesting. I feel like that's something that kind of I brings us back a little bit to the dangers of the Instagrams and the
Hmm.
social media that we live in is, it does feel like throughout the generations, the history of what is considered trash, like, is elevated only because there's like lower to go, kind of. like in the, there's a reason that everyone was mad that like Belle was reading books in the Beauty and the Beast. It's like because that's what lazy people did. They're just doing fantasy stuff. They were not like memorizing, the Bible and like going to work or whatever. And then comics come, and then movies and TV and video games. And it's like now I feel like if you watch a full like even 15-minute animated narrative, that's like much better for your brain than scrolling through milliseconds of various activities.
Hmm.
Um, the happiest and healthiest I am when I am in my phone is when I am moved out of social media into a longer form comics narrative. Um,
Yeah, you just have to really make the effort to back away from everything, anything that we're going to do with the internet, and just do your thing, and then come back and
I do have a
oh,
tip, an app tip that is not specifically designed for creators, but I love. Is that okay?
sure.
It's a free app. It's called Focus Friend. And
Okay.
it's like a little cartoon bean. And I'm Studio Bean Can Dan on the internet. So on brand for me, I didn't make it. This guy, Hank Green, did. And the premise is the bean is crocheting. It's crocheting socks and knitting scarves. And if you're on your phone, it can't focus. So it would love it if you just press this button and made your phone like not work for an hour or two. And so it could get its knitting done. And and if you interrupt it, you can do that, but it's going to be real sad. And it just like has this like a little bit of an emotional thing to like keep you be like, do I really want to go on Instagram right now, or am I gonna let this guy finish his socks, or else all the stitching will come undone. Uh, it's it's simple, it's silly, it's helped me make more comics this year. Focus friend,
And what's the name of that again?
focus friend, like
Focus Friend.
your
Okay.
friend helping you focus. Yeah, and you're looking for a little cartoon bean character. That's it.
So, what have we missed, or is there something you wanted to leave the readers and potential readers with? I know the Kickstarter uh, Friends in Stormy Weather Part Two is
Hmm.
like top of mind.
Yes.
I leave it to you. What else would you like to say about that?
Well, I'm going to start by saying if you go to danielmccloskey.com, DanielMcCloskey.com, you can read the first chunk of my comic for free. It'll get emailed to you. That is called Goodbye Cloudtown High, the origin of how Penn and Olive became friends. And you can unsubscribe at any time, but if you stay subscribed, you'll get some free comics. If you like those, you might not be bothered when I'm like, hey, my Kickstarter is happening, or hey, my store has more things in it again. So that's one thing if you want to stay in touch. Um, my very first book is a little darker and alternates between comics and prose if you're someone that likes to read word books. It is the angriest book I ever wrote because I was a teenager when I wrote it. It does appear to be important to some small section of people in the world, which is nice. It is free downloadable as a PDF on my store. It's called A Film About Billy. Um, yeah, I just keep that free, and you'll have to pretend you're buying it, but you don't have to pay. Um, if you do like that, again, I think you like my other stuff. Um, General information about Kickstarter. Kickstarter, if you're unfamiliar, is a crowdfunding thing. Uh, it is something that I use to print small runs. So only like 200 copies of this book are being made in the first printing. Um, it is also something that is really helpful if you do early. So any Kickstarter you see, if you back it the first minute, the first day, it is going to help the artist be seen on that platform. So I have a bunch of extra bonuses that I'm doing first day. I have free glow in the dark friendship bracelets for anybody signing up on day one. And I made some stickers of my friends' art. If you're a self-published cartoonist, having your friends do pinup art is always one of the delightful things about it. So
Yeah,
these are things that are just like extra little goodies to try to get people to sign up early. But I think generally, just yeah, read comics, enjoy it. Yeah, stay positive, do your best, call your friends. Friends matter, and thank you. Yeah,
wonderful. Thank you, Daniel. I think we can leave it there. Thanks so much.
thanks for having me.